Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, thank you for attending the Preparing for the CBAP, which is really a class for preparing for any kind of certification, particularly any of those that are associated with the business analysis field. This is an ongoing lunchtime webinar series that is sponsored by Treinen Associates in Olympia, Washington. My name is Chris Hicksgreen.
And my name is Misty O'Brien, and I've been a certified analyst for about 1.5 years, and I've been doing business analysis professionally for 6 years.
I only received my CBAP certification about 6 months ago, if that, and have been a business analyst for a couple of decades now.
So what we'll cover today is why take the CBAP exam, what to expect during the exam, learn how you learn best, some practice resources that will be emailed to you after the webinar, and what does the results look like for the exam.
This webinar is expected to take about half an hour at the very most, including questions. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Including questions. Again, feel free to submit those via the chat window, and we'll be sure to answer those at the end to the degree that our time allows. With that, I think we'll go ahead and get started, if that's all right. And that will we're going to start off with the topic of why take the CBAP at all, or again, any certification that applies to the business analysis field, and probably equally so to PM or others. The IIBA, or International Institute of Business Analysis, has its own perspective of why to begin. They note that personal and professional recognition can result from having a CBAP certification. There are further professional development opportunities, and that they cited increased income of up to 16% in annual salary if you're certified. I would take that last statistic with a little grain of salt. I don't know that causation equals correlation in that case. It could be that more ambitious BAs are putting themselves up for the test, but it's a possibility that you could be paid more. It's hard to argue that you would be paid less. I had my own reasons for getting the certification as well. As a consultant, I put myself forward to prospective employers about every year. And so I see a lot of, see a lot of job listings. And on the one hand, I'm seeing substantially more of those listings over time asking for a certification of some kind, from that almost never happening 3 years ago to perhaps being 15 or 20% of the group now. And I wanted to be part of that more desirable qualified group. And have that clear marker that differentiates me. We had recently asked a potential customer why they'd made a CBAP certification a requirement for a business analyst job that they had listed. And what they told us was that they didn't feel confident that every senior business analyst that they were seeing, not from us, but from job applications generally, were as qualified as they would like. To them, the certification was a shorthand for saying, this is a qualified individual. Finally, I say that making the investment in getting a certification is an indicator both that you have the skills and that you care enough to improve your own skill set.
For me, getting the certification was kind of the finale of, excuse me, the work that I had been doing and the certified education that I had taken over at the South Puget Sound Community College. And so it felt like a natural progression for me. I definitely wanted to put a stamp on all the hard work that I've been doing, excuse me. And that is why I decided to do the certification exam. We're gonna go on to, excuse me, wow. Learn how you learn best. And for me, I am more of a hands-on person. I really need to see what's going on and reproduce it myself. And that's my best learning style. And that is something I definitely recommend in going into any exam, is to learn how you learn best. And we'll have some materials for you that we'll see in the next slide that you can use to learn figure out how you learn best. In my first attempt at the exam, I went into it full gusto. It brought back a little bit of high school memories. I was reading the whole book, I was highlighting, and I was making note cards and reading a lot of material, and it's a lot to take in. My second attempt, I went at it a little differently, and I bought some online practice tests, and that did two things for me. That method really worked, as it put me in the situation, simulated situation of the test where I'm sitting at a computer, I'm taking the multiple test exams, and then it's giving me the ones I did wrong at the end. So it was very, very good simulation for the test. And then it allowed me to focus on the areas that I needed to work on. Instead of reading the whole gamut of information, I went and researched the questions that I had gotten wrong and really focused on the things that I was weak at. And that was definitely a better learning experience for me. This slide shows some of the online assessments you can use to figure out how you learn best. And these, again, will be emailed to you at the end of the webinar. And this gives you a little example of the types of questions that we'll ask to help you decide or help you figure out how you learn best. And that would carry on to what you should do to help study for the business analysis exam.
Regardless of how you learn best, it's going to be necessary to use more than just the BABAC or Business Analyst Book of Knowledge in order to study for the exam. The BABAC itself is 300 and some pages. It's a dense, difficult book, and it's in preparation. Let's not lose let's not lose sight of the fact that it's in preparation for what may be the hardest academic test that you'll ever take. It certainly was for me. What materials can you use to study? Well, IIBA itself provides some CBAP sample questions, of which I'll show you an example. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That is a concept you will know very well by the time you take the exam. This is the that's a fair sample of what we're looking at there. Thank you. There are also study guides available by various third-party vendors such as Cybex or Watermark. I personally am a big fan of Watermark, and I say that as somebody who doesn't have an endorsement or anything from them, but I thought that their materials were generally very high quality. BABAC flashcards are very worthwhile. The set that I ordered, I think again from BABAC, was some 700 cards. It was a massive set, but having reviewed those after taking the online exams and the like, really helped me feel more confident about going into the true exam. Finally, there are online study exams that you can find from a variety of third-party vendors and IIBA itself. Watermark again is a standout. And of course, depending on how you obtain your PDs generally, those will likely have online study exams too. Take every single one of those and treat it seriously as a marker for how well you're doing against the expectations of the test. So what happens on exam day? Well, let's take this in two gulps. We'll start first with the environment. You'll probably take the exam, at least we do here in Washington State, in a professional testing center. This is a place set up for people of all walks of life who are taking very serious tests for them, whether it be associated with school or with their professional pursuits. It's a very secure facility, and they're going to search you to ensure that you don't have any method of cheating. They will have you roll up your sleeves and take everything out of your pockets. You're not allowed to bring anything into the classroom at all, except for the scratch board, and I think they provide pencils there. They'll provide a calculator as well, because you might be surprised to find that there are a few math questions on the exam. They're not particularly hard ones, but if you weren't expecting them, as I was not, it's a little bit of a surprise. You have to shift gears a little bit to take those. And the test itself is on a computer. It's a multiple choice test of 120 questions for which you have 3.5 hours to complete the exam. the questions themselves are case study based. You'll read a scenario of anywhere between one paragraph and almost a full page of text, and then answer multiple choice questions based each of those exam questions. For every exam question you'll have, the ready-made multiple choice answers will have more than one right answer. It's not uncommon for 3 or 4 of those answers to actually be correct. In that case, you have to choose the most correct one, which of course is just as hard as it sounds. I think that's all I have for now.
So your results. When you finish your exam, you'll be surprised to not see your results right away. The center will make you take a survey on how clean the survey or the test area was, how friendly they were. And so it's a little frustrating to click through that survey to get to your results. And then you'll get a pass-fail. There is no scoring. It's kind of a mystery what score you need to pass. What it does provide you with is a list of areas that you should focus on if you fail. And earlier in the presentation, I did talk about 2 times because I did fail the first time. It was disheartening for sure, but I took a break, reassessed my learning style, and figured out the best way that I could go at it a second time. And I gave myself a break. The IIBA does require you to wait 3 months in between taking a second exam. It was frustrating, but it also allowed me to kind of step back and realize how I can learn better and what to focus on. I didn't jump into book right away or start the practice test right away. I kind of gave myself a break. About 6 weeks before the exam, I found the Watermark company that does the practice exams, and I sat through those, and that's how I got through it the second time. Failing definitely does not reflect on you and the business analyst's work that you do. I would say that they are not compared to the work you do. The test is not a reflection of who you are and the work that you do. So I recommend definitely going for it, even if you fail the first time. Just get back up on that horse and try again, because it was nice to actually see that pass and walk away with a smile and a piece of shiny paper. So, and that's all we have today. We're open to any questions now.
We've got 2 questions so far. The first one is, do you feel like you learned more or actually improved your skills by completing the certification?
Oh, that's a great question. Can I assume that everybody heard that? The question in brief was, did you actually improve your own skill set based on studying for the exam, all the other benefits aside? And for my part, I think that was a definite yes. I've been doing this for a long time, but one of the important elements about the CBAP and the other certification exams for business analysts is that they concentrate on 6 different business areas that IIBA has identified. As long as I've been doing this work, it is the case that I've been in a single sector for a very long time. I've been working with state and federal government agencies. And so it was really valuable to have to broaden my horizons and think for a moment about, what do people in the private sector do? What do people in manufacturing do? And from that perspective, I thought it was a very useful exercise.
So we had another question about. Sorry.
Oh, I can add. For me, I definitely agree. The studying and the amount of time that I put into it, it was nice to put some formalization to some of the processes and even images that we come up with and we create. It was nice to actually have this is what this formally means, and it does help you become, I think, a more in the know business analyst, to be able to have those conversations and know what those terms mean.
That's exactly right. There may be patterns that you've developed over time working with other individuals that are really well suited to business analysis, but you don't know the technical terms that are inserted in there, or what is used to describe them. and this very much helped you do that.
So we have another question. If you attended BA coursework at SPSDC, which is the local community college, and if so, did you find that coursework to be valuable, and in what ways was it valuable?
Great question again. I did take the exam, or the practice, excuse me, the education at SPSDC. They went exactly through the book, so it was very helpful. It was definitely on preparing for the exam and not how you necessarily do your work. The instructor was very good at applying situations that you may come across in your work to areas in the BABOK. So that was helpful, but it definitely prepared me for taking the exam. It went through the whole BABOK, and I think it was 8 sessions of 2-day classes, and yeah, it was beneficial, and I got my education that I needed to take the exam.
Another question is about references that are needed for the exam, for taking the exam. Did you have trouble getting references you needed, since BAs work pretty often with SMEs and less often with executives?
No, I didn't find that particularly difficult. So what the question refers to are some of the prerequisites that are necessary to sit for the exam. That in itself is a very involved process, and IIBA, or at least some of the practitioners, recommend a very high number of hours just to prepare for the your application. I think it was between 12 and 20 hours. I can't remember, but it's a body of time. Actually, I think one of the easier parts of that is finding the references. You need to submit 2, and then IIBA will randomly select 2 of those. Excuse me, you need to submit 3, and IIBA will randomly select 2 of those to speak to or interview. I don't quite know what they do on their end, to be truthful. Of course, whenever you submit a recommendation, it really behooves you to speak to the folks who you're asking to stand for you beforehand. Tell them what you're doing and why and what it means to you, and that helps both with their willingness, I think, and also their understanding of what the IIBA in this case is looking for. And yes, it's true. We often speak with SMEs, but I think and again, I work in the state sector most often. I think I usually was able to find a section manager or the like who was familiar with my work and willing to do that. But that's a very personal standpoint. I don't know if that's true for you as well.
Yes, I didn't have an issue finding people who were willing to validate the work that I'd done. I think I had a project manager, a previous project manager, and there was a business alignment manager that I used as my references. And again, as Chris said, I definitely told them there was an email or a call coming their way to validate the work that I had done. I don't think it limited who you can list as your reference.
I don't recall
So
that.
if you do closely work with a SME, I would ask them if they'd be willing to recommend you for your work that you've done and validate that. So don't discount them, or developer leads, maybe other people that might know how you work and as much as you work. So.
Another question we had was, is it safe to say that the test provided real-world application, not just test in the theoretical?
What do you think?
I mean, the test threw in some scenarios that I honestly can say I've never come across, but it doesn't mean that that wouldn't happen. So yes, it gives you real scenarios that could potentially happen. Some of them I think are really a full page of a scenario, so there's a lot of caveats that go into that scenario. So that
I think that's right. I think that's right. In so much as they can get into a real-world scenario in a third of a page, I think that they do reflect somebody's real world. It may not be yours in particular. Again, that speaks to that need to study the whole spectrum of business analysis work. But I thought they were relatively realistic by and large. Some theoretical stuff, to be sure, but mostly realistic scenarios.
Another question we have is, now that you're certified, are you finding any challenges getting educational credits to keep up your credential?
To be honest, I haven't had to get the education for continuing my certification yet, so it hasn't been on my list of.
My memory, and I may be off on this, is, well, I know for a fact that you now need 35 PDs in order to scan for the test. It used to be 21, but it's up to 35 now. I think it's something on the order of 20 to 30 over 3 years after you get the exam. So it, in theory, it's no harder after the exam than it is before. There's no body of PDs that you could have attended when you were not certified that you can't when you are certified. But it is, it's always a little bit of a challenge to do that. I obtained the vast majority of the PDs I needed to take the CBAP test through an online study course, sort of the analog to Misty's experience at SPSDC. To be truthful, I haven't thought about how I'll structure the PDs going forward. Traditionally, I've picked them up here and there at local chapter IIBA meetings. They sometimes have full-day sessions where you can pick up 12, perhaps. And my hope is that over just going organically over the course of the next 3 years, I'll be able to do that and maintain that certification.
There's several certifications available for business analysis. What made you choose IIBA and the CBAP?
For me, the classes at South Puget Sound were specific to the IIBA certification. So it was natural for me to just take the IIBA exam. Chris, do you have any?
Oh, I would just like to define some terms here. You're absolutely, the questioner is absolutely right. There are 4 levels within IIBA, and PMI also has a level that a certification that's very similar to the CBAP certification. I personally had been affiliated with IIBA longer than I had with PMI. That's less true for others. I know that they are considered to be very equivalent certifications, the PMI and the IIBA, the CBAP. And if I were in a hiring position, I wouldn't hesitate to choose somebody with the PMI certification instead. Within the 4 levels of the IIBA certification, the CBAP is the 3rd, the all but the highest. And the highest position, the highest certification, is still in development. They haven't issued those. Those are going to be for thought leaders in the business analysis space, and so nobody knows quite what that looks like yet. So if you get the CBAP or the equivalent PMI, then you're at the highest level of certification.
And then our last question, we'll probably wrap up, is about the eligibility requirements for the CBAP.
Okay. To sit for the 3rd level, as Chris said, you can apply for the 2 lower levels, which require less. But for the CBAP, there is a minimum of 7,500 working hours as a business analyst in a 10-year span. And that is covering 900 hours in each of the 4 of the 6 BABOK knowledge areas. For professional development, you have to have a minimum of 35 hours in the last 4 years. So as Chris said, that was recently increased from 21. Your references, and then an agreement with CBAP for a code of conduct that you must follow as a certified professional.
Right. The way to demonstrate your experience in all those different subject areas is to fill out an elaborate spreadsheet. That's where the time comes in, because you have to be able to document over the course of 6 or 10 years what you've been doing in under several different headings. And that's tricky and time consuming, but it pays to do it well. In theory, they warn of occasionally auditing applications, and so of course you have to approach it with all honesty.
And as a business analyst, sometimes we encroach on other areas, like testing or QA sometimes, and that work would not apply to any of those 6 knowledge areas. So it's important to be clear of what type of work you did and the hours that were involved in those knowledge areas. That's all
right.
I have.
I think that's it for us. Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate you attending this session. I hope it was worthwhile for you. We, Treinen, are going to be posting the information, including a video of this presentation on our website. For those people who registered for this particular session, we'll be sending you links to all the notes and all the other information that we discussed today. So again, thank you.
Thank you.